and the Todd Family YouTube video, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much for making referendum and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. If you jump on here live here on this Thursday evening, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Make sure to give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so and share the video on all social media platforms. If you look at the college football game that's going on tonight, which is starting about right now, it makes you wonder, why doesn't college football just stop doing Thursday night games altogether? You know, we started trending this direction 3-4 years ago because of the popularity of the NFL, and college football knows they're not going to compete with the NFL. Good evening, Keveron. Glad to have you here, as always. So instead of putting some good game on that's going to get destroyed in the ratings by the NFL, they just put on a college football game that nobody's going to watch unless you're a fan of one of those two teams. And then that way it looks like you got destroyed in the ratings because of the fact you had a bad game on, not the fact that everybody's watching the NFL. But if this is the kind of product you're going to put on Thursday night, what is the point? Now, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago you had NC State and Wake Forest. That's a Power 4 game. I know it's not, high-profile, traditional college football powerhouses, but it's at least names in a conference people recognize. But outside of that game, the majority of the Thursday night games this year have been Group of 5 teams or FCS teams. So what even is the point of putting it on TV? Hey there, Riker. Glad to have you here. Hey there, Hello. Glad to have you here. And I think it's the first time I've seen y'all's name in the comment section. So if it's y'all's first time being here, whatever reason made y'all stop by the channel tonight, thank you for being here. And if it is your first time here, feel free to give the video a like and a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, please do so and share the video on all social media platforms. Saturday, I want to put the word out one final time, but I'm going to be in Anderson, South Carolina for UCW Wrestling at the West Side Community Center. Thank you, Rocker, for liking and subscribing. I greatly appreciate that. We're going to be there 7:30 bell time for UCW's Fall Brawl. And thank you for subscribing and liking the channel. Hello, Kitty. I greatly appreciate that. We're going to have Carlito and many other big-time stars, so come on out and be with us. Purchase tickets now online at ucwtv.com or eventbrite.com, and I'll be there Saturday night. And thank you, Bren, for subscribing to the channel. Before I get into tonight's main topic, which is going to be college football, I want to talk about the Braves. We know I'm a huge Braves fan, but this year was a huge disappointment. And I'm assuming you mean UCW, Riker, and if so, I guess I will see you there. The Braves made a managerial change earlier in the week. It's been coming for a long time, ever since probably June, when you could tell the Braves season was pretty much over with, and that Brian Snitker had not signed a new contract. If you follow the Braves, you know that by now, if it's your contract year and they ain't re-signed you, you're not coming back. But with Brian Snitker, he's been with the organization for 49 seasons altogether, counting being a player and a coach and the manager. He was there 9 full seasons, 10 years altogether, taking over in 2016 when Freddie Gonzalez got fired, won a World Series in 2021. But he's no longer going to be the Braves manager, but he's taking some kind of advisory role, so he's still part of the Braves organization. But he got a brand new truck. Him and his family got an all expenses paid trip to, I want to say Hawaii, but don't quote me on that. And he's also going in the Braves Hall of Fame. So, sounds to me like they didn't want to fire the guy because of what he's done for the organization. So they felt like, hey, if we give this guy a brand new truck and an all expenses paid vacation, he'll probably step down. And he did. This was their way to get rid of the guy without getting rid of the guy. I never was a big fan of Brian Snitker. I never did like the way he managed the bullpen. To me, he just always pulled pitchers too early, and the ones that struggled, he always pulled too late. He never could figure out how to work a pitching staff. But early this week, might have been Tuesday, when they announced he was leaving, he did a press conference, and there was like 15 players that were there voluntarily to sit by his side. So when that happens, that tells you the players love him. The players worked hard for him. And baseball managers really, truly have less impact on the game than any other sport. 3% of baseball games are decided by what the manager does. And that's probably a little bit of a jump. It's probably more like 2.5%. But I'll round up and say 3%. So it's not like all of a sudden he's gone, the Braves get better. Hey there, Nick. Glad to have you here on this Thursday night. But the last 2 years, the Braves team to me just doesn't look like they have any enthusiasm at all. They look like they're just going through the motions. But, it's not Snicker's fault that at one time this year, all 5 of your starting pitchers were on the injured list. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate that. It's not Snicker's fault that, you cut Orlando Arce at shortstop, and your fill-in was Nick Allen, who is terrible at the plate. It's not Snicker's fault that Acuna got hurt. Austin Riley pretty much missed half the season. Albies got hurt again. None of those things are Snicker's fault. But still, in the month of September, when the Braves were out of it, you look at their record in September, and they were awesome in September, but it was too little, too late. So the team could have just gave up, and they didn't. It tells you that they like the guy, but they just need a new fire, a new voice. I want them to get Kevin Cash or Mark DeRosa. Kevin Cash might be a stretch because he's still managing the Tampa Bay Rays, and you just don't very often see a scenario in baseball where a manager leaves one club and goes to the next. It happens, but it's not common. I don't know if they'd be able to get Kevin Cash. But for Kevin Cash to either make the playoffs or nearly make it every year with the Rays, who are by far the poorest team in baseball with the worst payroll, tells you that he knows what he's doing. I also like Mark DeRosa, but back when I had the MLB Network, Mark DeRosa seems like he knows what he's talking about. He's not all into analytics like a lot of younger managers are. Plus, him being so young, I feel like he would be on the same page as the Braves' young players because he's the youngest one out there. So I think he'd be on the same page with the players a lot of times and see their point of view better. So I want either Kevin Cash or Mark DeRosa. I do not want Walt Weiss, and I do not want David Ross. Hey there, Shorty. Glad to have you here. And Brent, if you love the channel, appreciate that. Make sure you tell your friends, tell your family, and get them to subscribe as well. But tomorrow night, there's like 5 games, but really the only one that might be decent is West Virginia and BYU. That's ESPN at 10:30. But West Virginia's last 2 weeks, they have gotten destroyed. Ever since they beat Pittsburgh, they've been awful. And BYU is really good. So maybe the Mountaineers keep this game close for a half. But that's probably about it. But the other 4 games tomorrow night don't look appealing at all. Then Saturday, starting at noon, ABC, Kentucky, and Georgia. Now, I know a lot of years Kentucky hangs with Georgia, and a lot of years this game's competitive, and it just shouldn't be because a lot of years Georgia's just way better than Kentucky. But this year, I think Kentucky is absolutely dreadful. Unless Georgia comes out flat in the first half, the way they did against Tennessee and Alabama, this game's going to be over at halftime. But if they do come out flat, I can see Kentucky hanging with them just for that reason. But Georgia is by far the better team, and it's not close. Hey there, Red Roblox. Glad to have you here. And if you are new here, whatever made you stop by the channel tonight, I greatly appreciate it. Feel free to give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Share the video on all social media platforms and tell your friends, tell your family about the channel. Hey there, Philip. Glad to have you here on this Thursday night. And Red Roblox, I grew up in Georgia, so I guess you could say I'm a southern boy, because to most people, Georgia is a southern state, which is why I have the southern accent that I have. And thank you for subscribing, Red Roblox. I greatly appreciate that. Also at noon Saturday is Iowa State and Cincinnati. Now, Iowa State, to me, this year has overachieved big time. But I've been impressed so far with Cincinnati and their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby. And if you got a football question, feel free to ask it. Shorty and Red Roblox, you're in the Philippines. We're glad to have you here from the Philippines. And things are going fantastic, Okie Light. Hope they're going great for you as well. Noon on Fox, we have Wisconsin and Michigan. And Wisconsin needs to do something, because so far I've been wrong on Luke Fickell. I thought he was going to eventually turn that program around, and I just see no life out of that program. I don't expect them to beat Michigan, but they need to at least show up and hang with Michigan, or Luke Fickell may not make it through this season. Noon on ESPN. I thought you told me you subscribed, Red Roblox. That's the only way that I would know, because unless somebody tells me, I have no way to know when they subscribe. But I thought it came on the screen and said that you subscribed. If not, I apologize, but I thought I saw that on the screen. But that's the only way I know. I have no way to know who subscribed, who don't, unless they tell me. So if you tell me that and you have, then I know. If you tell me that and you haven't, then I just take your word for it, because I don't know. I thought I saw that on the screen. But Clemson, North Carolina is probably going to be a competitive game. Both teams so far this year are 0-5 against Power 4 teams. So somebody's going to get their first win against the Power 4 team Saturday. That's Dabo Swinney drinking a Coca-Cola. Walker, thank you for asking. That was a poster that I got in 2018, I think, but it came out one of the 2 years that Dabo won a national championship, and I think it was 2018. Of course, Coca-Cola always sponsors a national championship game, and that's Dabo drinking a Coke. But thank you for asking. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name, maybe, but glad to have you here. So Clemson, North Carolina will be a good game, be competitive, but it's just two awful football teams. And I've always wanted to play cricket, but I don't know enough people that live in my area to where I could make a team to play, but I would love to play. Air Force and Navy is the noon game on CBS. Nice to meet you too, Come back some other time. I'll post a video just about every single day. Football, baseball, basketball, racing, wrestling, and you never know what else we're going to talk about here on the channel. 1 o'clock on the CW, Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. Now, this is a game that, when the season started, looked like a win for Wake Forest because Virginia Tech was terrible. But ever since they fired Brent Pry, they have looked completely different. So this might be a good competitive football game, and there's nobody outside. Merv, that's a light reflecting through my window, but nobody outside. But thank you for asking. 3 o'clock on TNT, and I believe also True TV, Oklahoma State and Arizona. So Okie Light, if you're still here, your team plays at 3 o'clock Eastern time, which would be 2 o'clock in Oklahoma on Saturday. 3:30 on CBS, Texas and Florida. Now, there's supposedly rumors going around that Florida has already contacted who they want to be their next head coach, and they've told the guy that they're going to come back calling in a month or so. So if you believe that, that pretty much means Billy Napier's already out of a job, even though he's not officially out of a job. So wouldn't it be just like Florida to be all but out on Billy Napier and then come out Saturday and defeat Texas? That game's 3:30 on CBS, 3:30 on ABC, Vanderbilt and Alabama. 3:30 on NBC, Boise State and Notre Dame. CBS Sports Network has Florida International and the Yukon. 4 o'clock on Fox Sports 1, Michigan State and Nebraska. 4 o'clock on ESPNU, Texas State and Arkansas State. I think that'll be a good game. Now we move into the evening game. 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN, Texas Tech and Houston. Now you can put them in whatever order you want to put them in, but in my opinion, the best 5 teams right now in the country, whatever order you'd like, is Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Miami, and Texas Tech. In my opinion, that's the best 5 teams in the country as we sit here on October the 2nd, but of course that means absolutely nothing come January, but those are the best 5 teams right now: Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Penn State, and Texas Tech. 7 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, UNLV and Wyoming. 7:30 on NBC, Minnesota and Ohio State. ABC has the game of the week, and it's not close: Miami and Florida State. SEC Network, 7:45, Mississippi State and Texas A&M. 8 o'clock on Fox, Colorado and TCU. ESPN2, Kansas and Central Florida. ESPNU, Tulsa and Memphis. In the late game, 10:30, ESPN, California and Duke. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the week, and it was funny. I thought about it again today, looking over the schedules. I was going to talk about these games tonight. College football needs to do a better job. Hey there, Taddy. Glad to have you here. College football needs to do a better job of scheduling these games. And I know a lot of times you can't help it because a lot of times, Clemson, North Carolina might have been an appealing game back in March. You had no idea that by October the 4th you were going to have 1-3 Clemson, 2-2 North Carolina. Couldn't know that. So a lot of times on paper these games look good 6 months out, and then when it gets there it's like, oh my gosh. But a lot of these games, like Duke in California, even though it's an ACC game, that's not a conference game. And you have a lot of that, like Central Florida and Kansas. That's a Big 12 game, but that's not a Big 12 game. So you have a lot of that this weekend where you have games that are conference games, like Oklahoma State, Arizona is a conference game, but that's not a conference game. So this is a game and a weekend when you look at the schedule and you say, that's a conference game, that's a conference game, that's a conference game. And there just seems to be a lot in one particular weekend. And week 1 was loaded with games. Week 2 sucked. Last Saturday was loaded with games. This week sucks. And then next Saturday, the slate is as good as it was last Saturday. So it looks like this weekend college football just threw in the towel and said, piss on that weekend. And just took a bunch of teams and put them in a hat, shook the hat a little bit, and pulled out names. And whatever names they drew out, those teams got scheduled. They didn't even try this weekend. And, you know, the diehards are going to watch, but you've got to have something that's going to get their attention because every team gets 2 bye weeks now. So if you're a college football fan that mainly only watches your team, if your team has one of their bye weeks this Saturday, you're liable to find something else to do and not even turn the TV on because there's a lot of games this weekend that on paper don't look to me very good. Now, there's always games that on paper look like they're going to be really good, and then come game time, they're not. And then there's always games that look like they're going to be garbage, and then when it comes game time, they end up being good games. But a lot of the games this weekend just aren't even appealing, and that's why the games that I wrote down is a lot thinner than normal because there was a lot of the games that I saw on the schedule that I was like, that game ain't even worth talking about. I'm not even going to write it down. And that's bad for college football, especially now with Major League Baseball being in the playoffs, because if you're the kind of person that likes football and baseball, this Saturday, unless your team's playing, you might spend a lot of your time watching the baseball playoffs because there's just not a lot of games this weekend that get your attention. So college football's got to do a better job of, you know, great games in one week and then garbage the next week and then great games the next week. Now, I know you can't have many weeks like week 1 or like last week where you've got good games on all day long. But instead of having 12 good games one week and then 2 the next week, why not have 6 good games one week and 6 good games the next week? That way it's more evened out. So it doesn't look like you're putting all the big games in one week. I recall last year, I want to say it was the second Saturday of October last year. If it was, it's going to be that way again this year, where there was like 8 or 9 killer games on the schedule, and it's like, why do it all in one week? Even it out some. And I want to say it's the same way next week. I think last year, the second Saturday in October is when Ohio State played Oregon, and I think there was another big-time matchup that day, and I think it's the same way this year. So they need to do a better job of evening out the games and not putting 100 good games in one week and then 2 the next week. But any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Polar opposites. Albert Einstein was a genius. His brother Frank, a monster. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them.